Nora Winters clutched the letter to her chest, tears streaming down her face as townsfolk walked past her on the main street of Promise Creek, Colorado, some averting their eyes while others whispered behind raised hands. The year was 1878, and in a town where everyone knew everyone's business, Nora's humiliation was complete and very public. "Poor fool," she heard someone mutter. "Waited 3 years for a man who was married to someone else the whole time." The words stung worse than the harsh autumn wind that whipped through the dusty street. 3 years she had waited faithfully for Edgar Thornton, the traveling salesman who had promised to return and marry her once he had established himself in Denver. 3 years of letters, of promises, of dreams, all shattered by the arrival of a woman claiming to be Mrs. Thornton, with 2 small children in tow, looking for her wayward husband who had apparently been courting women in several towns along his sales route. Nora had been publicly humiliated when Mrs. Thornton confronted her outside the general store, waving their marriage certificate and calling Nora terrible names. The entire town had witnessed it, and overnight, Nora had gone from being the respected schoolteacher to an object of pity and ridicule. "Miss Winters," called Mr. Peterson, the owner of the general store where she had worked part-time to supplement her teaching income. "I think it's best if you don't come in tomorrow. The mothers are concerned about, well, the example you might set for their children." Nora swallowed hard. "You're dismissing me from the store? But I'm sorry, Nora. Give it time to blow over." He turned away, unable to meet her eyes, but Nora knew what that meant. In a small town like Promise Creek, nothing ever blew over. Her reputation was ruined. By nightfall, she had received a letter from the school board as well, regretfully informing her that her services would no longer be required. With nowhere else to turn, Nora packed her meager belongings into a single trunk. She had come to Promise Creek full of hope after losing her parents, seeking a fresh start. Now, at 24, she was starting over again, but this time with a tarnished name. The stagecoach depot was mercifully quiet when she arrived the next morning. She had enough money saved for a ticket to Denver, where she could disappear into the anonymity of the city. As she waited, a commotion drew her attention to the street. A cattle drive was passing through town, and at its head rode a tall man on a magnificent buckskin horse. Unlike the other drovers, who were dusty and rough-looking, this man carried himself with quiet authority. His face was partially obscured by a wide-brimmed hat, but she could see a strong jawline dusted with stubble. "That's Jake Callahan," the depot clerk said, noting her interest. "Owns the CCC ranch about 20 miles north. Good man, fair employer. Lost his wife about 5 years back. Keeps to himself mostly, except when he brings cattle to market." Nora nodded politely, not really interested in local gossip anymore. Her heart felt too heavy, too broken to care about strangers passing through town. The stagecoach was late, and as the afternoon wore on, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. The depot clerk frowned at the sky. "Looks like we're in for a real gully washer. Stage might not come at all if the creek floods." Thunder rolled across the plains as if to confirm his prediction. Nora felt panic rising in her chest. She couldn't stay another night in Promise Creek, not with everyone whispering about her. "Miss," a deep voice startled her. She turned to find Jake Callahan standing nearby, hat in hand. Up close, his eyes were a startling blue against his sun-weathered skin. "Pardon me, but I couldn't help overhearing. You're heading to Denver." "Yes," she answered cautiously. "Stage won't make it today. Creek's already rising." He glanced at her trunk. "You look like you're leaving for good." Nora lifted her chin. "I am." Something in his expression softened. "I've got a wagon heading back to my ranch. My cook's wife is their decent woman. You're welcome to stay until the weather clears and the stage runs again." Nora hesitated. Going with a strange man could be dangerous, but staying in Promise Creek was unbearable. "I don't take charity, Mr. Callahan." A small smile tugged at his lips. "Wasn't offering any. Ranch is short-handed. Cook's wife could use help with the mending and such. I'll pay fair wages for your time." It was a dignified solution to her immediate problem. After a moment's consideration, Nora nodded. "Thank you. That's very kind." "Not kind. Practical." He lifted her trunk with ease. "I'm Jake Callahan." "Nora Winters," she replied, waiting for the flicker of recognition, the judgment in his eyes when he connected her name to the scandal. But there was nothing. Either he hadn't heard the gossip or he didn't care. Either way, it was the first time in days that someone had looked at her as a person rather than a cautionary tale. The journey to the Triple C Ranch was wet and miserable. Rain poured down in sheets, turning the trail to mud. Nora huddled under a tarp in the wagon bed, her trunk secured beside her. Jake rode alongside, occasionally checking on her but mostly keeping to himself. By the time they reached the ranch, Nora was soaked and shivering. The main house was larger than she'd expected. A sturdy two-story structure with a wide porch and warm light glowing from the windows. "Martha," Jake called as he helped Nora down from the wagon. "Got a visitor needs drying out." A plump, middle-aged woman appeared at the door, wiping her hands on her apron. "Land's sakes, you're drenched to the bone. Come in, come in." Martha Miller, the cook's wife, took charge immediately, ushering Nora into the house and upstairs to a guest room, chattering all the while. "Mr. Callahan says you're to stay until the weather clears. I'll bring up hot water for a bath, and I've got a nightgown you can borrow." "Thank you, but," Nora began. "No arguments, miss. You'll catch your death otherwise." Martha's kind efficiency brooked no opposition. "The men are all in the bunkhouse, so you needn't worry about propriety. It's just us and Mr. Callahan in the main house, and he keeps to himself in the study most evenings." The bath was heavenly, and the borrowed nightgown, though too large, was clean and warm. Martha brought her a tray with hot soup and fresh bread. As Nora ate by the fireplace in her room, the tension of the past few days began to ease from her shoulders. There was a soft knock at the door. "Miss Winters? It's Jake Callahan. May I have a word?" Nora hastily pulled a shawl around her shoulders. "Come in." Jake entered, keeping a respectful distance. He changed into dry clothes as well, and his damp hair curled slightly at his neck. "Wanted to make sure you're settling in all right." "Yes, thank you. Mrs. Miller has been very kind." He nodded. "Martha mentioned you were a teacher. That right?" "I was," Nora replied cautiously. "Interesting coincidence. Been looking for someone to teach my foreman's children, and a few others from neighboring ranches' regular teacher. We had moved back east last month." He studied her face. "Would you be interested? Just until you get to Denver, of course." Nora stared at him. "Mr. Callahan, I appreciate the offer, but I sense you know more about my situation than you've let on." Jake's expression remained neutral. "I know there's been talk. Don't put much stock in gossip myself." "It's not all gossip," Nora said quietly. "I was deceived by a man for 3 years. Made a complete fool of myself. Seems to me the fool was the man who didn't value what he had." Jake replied simply. "Offer stands, Miss Winters. No pressure. Get some rest." After he left, Nora stood by the window watching the rain. For the first time since her public humiliation, someone had offered her not pity, but respect and a chance to work. It was a small kindness, but it warmed her more than the fire. In the morning, the rain had stopped, but word came that the creek had flooded, washing out part of the road to town. The stage wouldn't run for at least a week. Nora agreed to teach the children during her stay, grateful for the opportunity to feel useful again. The makeshift schoolroom was set up in a corner of the ranch's dining hall. 6 children ranging from 6 to 12 years old gathered each morning, eager to learn. Nora found herself enjoying their enthusiasm and innocence. They didn't care about her past. They only cared that she knew exciting stories and could explain arithmetic in a way that made sense. Jake often found reasons to pass by during lessons, lingering to listen as she read aloud or explained a concept. She noticed his eyes on her sometimes, thoughtful and warm, but he never intruded or made her uncomfortable. In the evenings, after the children had gone home and the ranch hands had retired to the bunkhouse, Nora would sometimes join Jake on the porch. Their conversations started awkwardly but soon flowed more naturally. He spoke of his life on the ranch, of his dreams to expand his herd, of the challenges of the cattle business. Nora found herself sharing stories of her students, her love of teaching, her hope to someday open her own school. She learned that Jake had come west as a young man, working his way up from cowhand to ranch owner through determination and hard work. He'd been married briefly, but his wife had died of fever before they could have children. "Must be lonely," Nora said one evening, watching the sunset paint the plains gold and crimson. "Used to it," Jake replied, but something in his voice suggested otherwise. As days stretched into a week, Nora found herself in no hurry to leave. The Triple C Ranch had become a sanctuary, a place where her worth wasn't measured by her mistakes but by her contributions. The children were thriving under her tutelage, and even some of the ranch hands had asked for help with reading or writing letters home. One afternoon, as Nora was dismissing the children, she heard horses approaching. Looking out the window, she froze. Edgar Thornton, the very man who had deceived her, was riding toward the ranch house, accompanied by 2 other men she didn't recognize. Jake emerged from the barn, intercepting the visitors before they reached the house. Nora couldn't hear the conversation, but she could see Edgar gesturing animatedly while Jake stood firm, arms crossed over his chest. After the children had left, Nora ventured outside. The visitors were gone, but Jake remained, a thunderous expression on his face. "Mr. Callahan? Is everything all right?" Jake turned, his expression softening when he saw her. "That man, Thornton, came looking for you." Nora's heart raced. What did he want? Said his wife had the wrong idea. Claimed he wasn't really married. That it was all a misunderstanding. Jake's jaw tightened. "Wanted to talk to you," to explain. "And what did you tell him?" Nora asked quietly. "Told him you weren't here. Told him to move along." Jake stepped closer. "Was that wrong? Should I have let him speak to you?" Nora shook her head, tears pricking at her eyes. "No, thank you. I have nothing to say to Edgar Thornton." Jake's expression was gentle. "Martha tells me the road to town is passable now. Stage should run tomorrow." "Oh!" The word fell between them, heavy with unspoken emotions. "I suppose I should pack my things." Jake looked out over the land, his profile strong against the afternoon light. "You could stay, you know. Children are learning well with you. Parents are pleased." "And you, Mr. Callahan?" Nora asked softly. "Would you be pleased if I stayed?" His eyes met hers, steady and clear. "Very much so, Miss Winters." That evening, as Nora contemplated her decision, a commotion outside drew her attention. Raising the window, she heard angry voices approaching the house. With a sinking heart, she recognized several women from Promise Creek, including Mrs. Peterson, the general store owner's wife. "We know she's here, Callahan." Mrs. Peterson's shrill voice carried clearly. "You're harboring a woman of questionable character." Nora's hand flew to her mouth. They had come all this way to continue her public shaming. She sank to the floor, hugging her knees, as memories of the humiliation in town flooded back. How naive she had been to think she could escape her past so easily. From her window, she could see Jake standing tall on the porch, blocking the women's path to the house. "Mrs. Peterson, ladies, you're trespassing on private property. We have a right to protect our community from moral corruption," another woman shouted. "That woman deceived us all, pretending to be respectable while carrying on with a married man. Miss Winters was the one deceived." Jake's voice was calm but steely. "She's been nothing but hardworking and honorable since arriving here. She has no place teaching children. No decent person would employ her," Mrs. Peterson declared. "Then I guess I'm not decent," Jake replied evenly, "because I find her to be an excellent teacher and a woman of fine character who was wronged by a dishonorable man and then abandoned by those who should have supported her." Nora crept closer to the window, hardly daring to breathe as Jake continued. "Now, I suggest you ladies return to town. Miss Winters is under my protection as long as she chooses to stay at the CCC. "Your protection?" Mrs. Peterson's voice dripped with insinuation. "What exactly does that mean, Mr. Callahan?" Jake's voice hardened. "It means anyone who speaks ill of her answers to me. It means she has a home here for as long as she wants one. It means I recognize what you apparently cannot, that she is a woman of intelligence, grace, and strength who deserves respect, not condemnation." There was a moment of stunned silence before the women retreated, muttering among themselves. Nora stood frozen by the window, tears streaming down her face. No one had ever defended her so passionately. A soft knock at her door roused her. "Nora?" Jake's voice was gentle. "May I come in?" She wiped her tears and opened the door. Jake stood there, concern etched on his features. "I'm sorry you had to hear that. Those women had no right." "You defended me," Nora whispered. "Why?" Jake took her hand, his touch warm and steady. "Because I see you, Nora Winters. Not what happened to you, not what others say about you. You." In that moment, something shifted between them. Nora felt it, a connection deeper than gratitude or friendship. "I don't want to go to Denver," she admitted softly. Jake's smile was slow and warm. "Good, because I don't want you to go either." The next few weeks established a new rhythm on the CCC ranch. Nora continued teaching the children, but she also began helping Martha with the household management. The two women became fast friends, with Martha offering practical wisdom and Nora bringing fresh ideas to the running of the ranch house. Jake and Nora's evening conversations on the porch became a cherished ritual. They talked about books, about the children's progress, about dreams for the future. Sometimes they simply sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the vast Colorado sky. Word spread that Nora Winters was under Jake Callahan's protection, and gradually the whispers and judgment receded. When they attended church together in Promise Creek, people who had once shunned her now nodded politely. It wasn't acceptance exactly, but it was a start. One crisp November evening, Jake invited Nora to ride with him to a ridge overlooking the ranch. The view was breathtaking, golden plains stretching to the distant mountains, cattle grazing peacefully in the valley below. The ranch buildings nestled like toys in the landscape. "I came out here when I first bought this land," Jake said, dismounting and helping Nora down from her horse. "Stood right here and tried to imagine what it could become." Nora looked around, taking in the beauty of the place. "You've built something wonderful, Jake." "Not finished yet." He took her hand, his expression serious. "Nora, when you came here, you were running away from something. I'm hoping maybe now you might consider running toward something instead." Her heart quickened. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I've come to care for you deeply. More than I thought possible after losing Eleanor." He squeezed her hand gently. "I'm not asking for any declarations, just for you to consider staying. Permanently." Nora studied his face. This man who had given her refuge when she needed it most, who had defended her honor, who had seen worth in her when she couldn't see it in herself. "I've already decided to stay, Jake. I just didn't know if you wanted. He cut her off gently, raising her hand to his lips. I want Nora. I want very much. The kiss that followed was tentative at first, then sure and sweet. When they broke apart, Nora felt as though something that had been broken inside her had finally begun to heal. People will talk, she warned. Jake laughed. Let them. I've never much cared for gossip. They rode back to the ranch hand in hand, the future stretching before them like the open plains full of possibility and promise. As winter settled over the Colorado territory, the Triple C Ranch prepared for the Christmas season. The house was decorated with pine boughs and red ribbons, and Martha outdid herself with baking. The children's lessons included carols and Christmas stories, and even the ranch hands got into the spirit, whittling toys for the younger children. Jake surprised Nora with a beautiful desk for the schoolroom, handcrafted by a carpenter in town. Every proper teacher needs a desk, he said, beaming at her delight. On Christmas Eve, after a festive dinner with the ranch hands and neighboring families, Jake asked Nora to join him for a walk in the freshly fallen snow. The night was clear and cold, stars blazing overhead, their breath-forming clouds in the frigid air. I have something for you, Jake said, reaching into his pocket. It was my mother's. He held out a small box. Inside was a delicate gold ring with a single pearl. It's not fancy or modern, but it was given with great love, just as I'm giving it to you now. Nora looked up at him, her eyes shining. Jake Callahan, are you proposing to me? I am, he replied solemnly. Nora Winters, I know we haven't known each other long by some standards, but I know my own heart. You're the strongest, kindest woman I've ever met. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Nora thought of the journey that had brought her here, the heartbreak, the humiliation, the despair. And then this man, this ranch, this new life that had emerged from the ashes of the old. Yes, she whispered, and then louder. Yes, I will marry you, Jake. He slipped the ring onto her finger and gathered her into his arms, kissing her deeply as snowflakes began to fall around them. The wedding took place on New Year's Day, a simple ceremony in the ranch house with Martha and her husband as witnesses, and the children Nora taught forming an impromptu choir. Nora wore a new blue dress that Martha had helped her make, with lace at the collar and cuffs. Jake couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked toward him, her dark hair adorned with white winter roses. You're beautiful, he whispered as she reached his side. You make me feel beautiful, she replied, taking his hand. The circuit preacher pronounced them man and wife, and as Jake kissed his bride, cheers erupted from the assembled guests. Even a few people from Promise Creek had come, including Mr. Peterson, who awkwardly offered congratulations and an apology for his earlier treatment of Nora. The reception that followed was joyous, with fiddle music and dancing, abundant food, and toasts to the happy couple. As evening fell, Jake and Nora slipped away to the privacy of their room, now theirs together. Mrs. Callahan, Jake said softly, helping her remove the flowers from her hair. How does it sound? Wonderful, Nora replied, turning to face him. Like a new beginning. Their first night as husband and wife was tender and passionate, a joining of hearts as well as bodies. Afterward, as they lay together in the quiet darkness, Nora marveled at the journey that had brought her here. When I first came to Promise Creek, I thought I knew what love was, she said, her head resting on Jake's chest. I thought it was grand gestures and pretty words. Jake stroked her hair. And now I know it's standing up for someone when everyone else turns away. It's seeing their worth when they can't see it themselves. She raised herself on one elbow to look at him. It's building something together, day by day. He kissed her gently. That's what we'll do, Nora. Build something beautiful, day by day. Spring came to the Colorado territory in a riot of wildflowers and new calves. The Triple C Ranch prospered under Jake's management and Nora's organizational skills. The schoolroom expanded as more neighboring families sent their children to learn from Mrs. Callahan, the best teacher in the county, as Jake proudly told anyone who would listen. On their 6-month anniversary, Jake took Nora back to the ridge where he had proposed. The view was different now, green and lush with spring growth, but no less beautiful. "I have news," Nora said, a smile playing at her lips. "The doctor confirmed it yesterday. We're going to have a baby." Jake's face transformed with joy. He lifted her off her feet, spinning her around carefully before setting her down and dropping to his knees to press a gentle kiss to her still flat stomach. "A baby?" he whispered, awe in his voice. "Our baby." Nora ran her fingers through his hair. "Our family." As they rode back to the ranch, Nora reflected on how much had changed in a year. From the depths of public humiliation to the heights of true love and the promise of a family of her own. The road had been difficult, but it had led her exactly where she needed to be. The following December, as snow blanketed the Triple C Ranch once more, Nora gave birth to a healthy baby girl with Jake's blue eyes and Nora's dark hair. They named her Hope, for what had sustained them both through dark times and brought them together. Martha cooed over the baby, declaring her the most beautiful child she'd ever seen. The ranch hands lined up awkwardly to pay their respects to the new arrival, each man removing his hat and speaking in hushed tones as though in church. On Christmas Eve, as Nora nursed their daughter by the firelight, Jake sat beside them, his arm around his wife, his expression one of perfect contentment. "Do you ever think about what might have happened if I hadn't been at the stage depot that day?" he asked softly. Nora looked down at their daughter, then up at her husband. "I think some things are meant to be, Jake. Some people are meant to find each other." "Even when the path is hard?" he asked, brushing a kiss against her temple. "Especially then," Nora replied, "because the hard path makes you appreciate the destination all the more." As Hope drifted to sleep in her mother's arms, Jake and Nora shared a kiss that held all the promise of their future, together a future built on respect, understanding, and a love that had transformed them both from wounded souls into a family. In the years that followed, the Triple C Ranch became known not just for its fine cattle, but for the school that Nora established on the property. Children from miles around came to learn, and Nora's reputation as an educator eclipsed any memory of the scandal that had once threatened to define her. Jake and Nora's family grew to include 2 more children, a son named after Jake's father, and another daughter who had her mother's spirit and determination. Their home was filled with laughter, learning, and love. And if anyone in Promise Creek still remembered the days when Nora Winters had been mocked as a fool for being deceived by a dishonest man, they never mentioned it. Not when they saw her standing proudly beside her husband at community gatherings. Not when they witnessed the respectful way Jake Callahan looked at his wife, as though she were the most precious thing in his world. Because in the end, what defined Nora wasn't the man who had deceived her, but the man who had recognized her true worth and the strength she found within herself to build a new life from the ashes of the old. And that, as any true Westerner knew, was the most beautiful story of all.